Today on the PIO podcast, we'd like to welcome Public Information Officer Stephen Combs from the Bluffton Fire Department in Bluffton, South Carolina. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, Stephen, I've heard a lot about you, and part of it is because we both work for the same organization on the side, but we'll go into that in detail. First off, how long have you been a PIO for? How many number of years have you been a PIO?
Yeah, so I got started actually in 2015 with a chance encounter emergency manager that I got into contact with through just it was truly a chance encounter. And from that point on, I found that public information was just a passion. And so I was super excited to be a part of it.
So you didn't have a journalism background or anything like that, or you just, like you said, chance encounter?
Yeah, no, actually, my background's business administration. It's my undergrad studies, and had no idea that public information was even a thing. I'd been working for a nonprofit organization in their television studio and doing some of their IT work, and just, hey, what do you do? And that short conversation turned into, why don't you come work for me? And ended up starting a county television station for a county here in the upstate of South Carolina. And 10 years later, here I am.
Wow. That's awesome. Oh, that's great. So it's always great when I hear someone that didn't have a journalism background that's in the field, because it reminds me of how I started. I was a sergeant when they said, "Hey, we want you to be a PIO," and I'm like, "Huh?" And the next thing you know, I'm bit by the bug, and I'm in my 21st year of this now, doing stuff like this. So yeah,
well,
it's
that's
awesome.
a funny thing too, because usually it's, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later, but usually it's, hey, there's a TV camera over there, go take care of it. So, but I didn't have that experience.
No, neither did I. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, my former mayor years ago, like I was still green. I remember we were in a meeting, and he stood up and he said, "Listen, the way I handle the media is I don't talk to him." So, and I'm like, "Oh, that's not back then I said that wasn't a good idea, but
Right.
yeah, so yeah, we've come a long way since then. But that's awesome. All right,
Sure.
so how did you end up at Bluffton then?
So I actually started out at the Anderson County Sheriff's Office in Anderson, South Carolina. I worked under two great sheriffs up there, Sheriff John Skipper, and then finally with Sheriff Chad McBride. I worked in the emergency management division for 7 years and just began to grow in experience and background. Then I guess it was probably 3 years ago, I started wanting to look at some different opportunities. My wife went through breast cancer at the time, and we visited the low country of the state, came to Hilton Head Island, spent some time in Bluffton, and decided that this is kind of the place that we wanted to be. And so we looked for opportunities down here, and here I am.
Awesome. Well, you know what? It's always great to hear stories like that. Like, I left the field and started the podcast based on my wife having breast cancer. So she went through breast cancer, came out of it great 6 months later. And, and then I'm like, I retired to take care of my wife. Now she's fine. What am I going to do? So I'm like, all right, I'm going to start a podcast. And I wasn't really planning a podcast for PIOs, but it just became one of those things where there isn't one out there, because I started looking, there wasn't anything there. And then that's how I started the podcast, was to stay connected to the community while I looked to see what else was out there for me to do. So it was very fun to do and start. And almost 5 years later now, I'm still doing it.
Once you find your passion, it's kind of hard to get away from it, isn't it?
No, yeah, it is impossible. And of course, my wife says, you're not quite making money on it yet. You're close, but it'll be nice if you can make some money from this passion. I'm like, I'm getting there.
Yep. In
So,
time.
exactly. Stephen, where is Bluffton located? What's the population, and how many fire department personnel do you have?
Yeah, so Bluffton is God's country. I'll just tell you that right now. We're in the beautiful low country of South Carolina in Beaufort County. We're just north of the Georgia state line, and Savannah, Georgia is about a 15, 20-minute drive from here. Our population right now is roughly 60,000 in the 246 square miles that we serve. Our organization has 9 fire stations. We currently have 180 employees, and of those 180, approximately 160 are line personnel. The other 20 or so are administrative personnel like myself.
Still a decent sized agency then. I mean, the mileage is probably not all that great, but it's still a decent population for a fire department number of personnel. That's awesome. Now, I know South Carolina had some weather related issues because of Hurricane Helene. How were you impacted with that?
Helene did give us a little bit of challenge. I think most of what we experienced was down trees and power lines. It actually provided for us one of our busiest days on record. We had 165 calls that we responded to in that 24-hour period. And that's generally what we might experience for one station in an entire month. So, overall, thankfully, we didn't have significant damage. We did have a couple of tornadoes touch down, EFOs, but the majority of the damage was just trees down and debris like that.
Yeah, incredibly lucky. And I know looking at some of our counterparts that are working in North Carolina and those that have volunteered to be deployed there to help out, just I don't think the media is quite giving it the justice that it should be giving it. It's the devastation there is amazing. I've been through some of those communities when my family traveled out that way, and
Yeah.
I'm in shock.
Robert, I lived there for 8 years. I lived in Western North Carolina in the mountains, Maggie Valley, Waynesville. I lived in Asheville and worked there. And when I saw those pictures on the, the TV of Biltmore Village, literally, like, I mean, even now I'm getting emotional about it because the tremendous people that live in that area have just lost their lives and lost their livelihood. And I just can't even fathom what they're going through at this time. In fact, the gentleman who hired me in emergency management is the emergency manager for Buncombe County, North Carolina, and um, I guarantee you he's up to his ears in challenges up there. So I just pray for those people.
Yeah, I tell you, you think about some of the stories that have come out have just been shocking. Families lost, whole communities just wiped off the map, and probably
Yeah.
are not coming back.
Well, I read one story of a gentleman lost 11 of his family members, and I've got 5 kids, and I've got a granddaughter, and just to lose
Wow,
11 family members at one time is unbelievable.
absolutely. I agree. I agree. All right, Stephen. Last year, you were one of just a few PIOs who achieved the designation of being a credentialed public information officer from the Center of Public Safety Excellence. I interviewed Ashley about the program itself, but I want to hear about you and what it took you to get your credentialing and the what it took to put all that stuff together.
Well, I have Ashley to thank for that because she kept encouraging me, Stephen, do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. And I'm like, for me, I looked at it and the application was pretty lengthy. And initially I was like, nah, I don't think I want to do this. But Ashley kept pushing me, and God love her. She's just such a great encouragement. And going through the process, I had already gone through the Master PIO program with FEMA, graduated from that. During COVID, I went back and got my master's degree in emergency management because I just wanted to be more proficient in the ability to meet the needs of our emergency management professionals here in South Carolina. And so I had everything pretty much in place. I'd already completed all of the credentials, all of the background, and so it was a matter of just filling out the application and getting that approval process taken care of. Our fire district is actually an accredited fire agency, one of just over 300 in the world that are accredited fire agencies. So it was kind of a hand in glove fit for us to just continue that process. And so for me, it was a smooth process, and Ashley was able to help me through it. So thank you, Ashley. I appreciate you.
And I'm sure she did appreciate you doing that because it just adds more credibility to the process and having somebody with your background having the being credentialed says a lot, and it encourages those that have not gotten credentialed yet to do
Right.
it because
Yeah. And I think I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
oh, go ahead.
I think we're up to about 39, 40 individuals. This conversation was one that had started, I think, up at EMI, at the Emergency Management Institute, among the PIOs who were going through that master program. We were looking for a way to, really bring some credibility to the role of the public information officer. And out of those conversations, Ashley and a team of professionals were able to work with CPSE to developed this credentialing program. And so I think it really adds value to who we are as an organization and also who we are as a profession. We're continuing to grow and the value is just tremendous, I think.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is I remember we were at the NAOA conference in Clearwater one year, and this is when she just brought up the idea of credentialing, and
Okay.
everybody's like, "Well, yeah, nobody's gonna ever want to do what organization's gonna want to do that?" And lo and behold, I think this got to be at least 6 years ago when she initially brought this up. So she's been working at it, working hard. So God love her, man.
Yep.
She is a pistol.
But yeah.
So, Stephen, going to where the two of us both work, you've been working for Texas A&M Teaks for several years now. And how has that experience enriched you both personally and professionally?
Well, first and foremost, you've had the opportunity to work with one of our great friends, Sean Meekum. Sean and I have loved working with that guy. I mean, he's become like probably one of my closest friends, and he just has such a great wealth of experience from his military background in his days as an external affairs officer. And he just is a lovable guy. I mean, you couldn't meet somebody who was
I
more
agree.
likable, who was more compassionate. And so working with him, I feel like that has made me a better person because he's just so genuine. You know, he loves people, he loves what he does, and he shares his passion. You can't buy that.
No,
When you find somebody who's got that kind of passion, it's amazing. And he's been doing this now for close to 20 years. So I started working with him back in March of 2020. Well, that's when I got hired. COVID put a delay on when we actually started. I think I started maybe August of 2020, and we had some protocols in place to minimize exposure to COVID during that time. Since that time, I was blessed to have the opportunity to help rewrite the current curriculum that's being taught. And so it's just been a tremendous opportunity for me to be able to not only enhance my public speaking and teaching opportunities, but writing skills as well. So it's been awesome. I love it.
going back to Sean, my wife always says when I come back from training, she goes, you're like beaming with excitement. I go, I have just the greatest time teaching the course with the instructors I've been there with. Sean is obviously the lead on
Yeah.
all of them, and I partnered up with other people, and it is just a fun experience, and it's just rewarding to give our knowledge and deliver the curriculum to those attendees, and then find that they'll send you an email, hey, what's your opinion on this? Or, and when you get that to me makes it that much more fun because it means that we've been able to reach somebody and they believe that we have the answers for them. And kudos to you for the curriculum, the rewrite. And that goes into my next question. You rewrote the public information on all hazards incident curriculum. You rewrote it. Yeah. What was that experience like?
It was long. When Sean, prior to Sean kind of taking the lead for this area, Steve Kine was our boss, and man, he was a taskmaster. But it was good taskmaster in a good way because we had to have the curriculum drafts for each chapter had to be in at a certain time, and we had to work on it. And there were times where we were coming up against these deadlines, and I was up till early in the morning saying, "Man, I've got to get this done." Recognizing with this curriculum the opportunity and the power that we had to affect the profession, because there's people that take this class who have zero experience. There's people who take this class that have been doing it for 20, 25 years, and they're able to walk away with at least one nugget of information that they can use. I love the operating on the philosophy of learn it today and use it tomorrow. And I think that's what the value of the TEAKS class brings is it gives you that opportunity. And there's so many resources in that book as well.
And I agree. And what, you look at the size of it and they're getting a digital version, which in a sense is almost better because it makes it easier to find stuff,
Hmm.
because you can always do a keyword search and find it quicker than I could flipping through the book. And the book is it's just amazing. I remember I took
I'm
this,
old school, brother. I'm sorry.
I
I
know I
can't.
like
I
books. I
still have
do.
to have that book.
I like books, but I remember taking this course and probably Sean delivered this course back when I took it, when I was a PIO well over a decade ago.
Yeah.
I remember taking it and going, wow, there's a lot here. And that was back then. And it's been revamped. And so kudos to you and the other contributors that helped rewrite this.
It was a great team effort, and integrating some of the feedback that we got through the reviews of the class. That was critical, especially in the social media element. And so I think the product, when it came out, I'm really pleased with what we were able to accomplish, and I'm so excited that it's being taught now and that I have a part of that. So appreciate it.
Did you put in the social media exercise? Because I don't remember that being in the last course that I
Yeah, so
took.
we added the social media aspect because we felt like there needed to be something with a practical application to that. Social media is constantly changing, and so we wanted something to give people an opportunity to build out that social media exercise. And so yeah, that was part of the new curriculum that we added.
Well done. Well done. I really enjoyed delivering that, but it was also good to see some people that were like, "Oh, I didn't think of that." And
Hmm.
like you said, those nuggets that they take away are so important.
Awesome.
Sure, Stephen, when you first became a PIO, what did you find the most challenging?
Gosh, for me, I think the biggest challenge was I didn't know what I didn't know. There's so much to learn being a public information officer. And I set out with the goal of becoming one of the best public information officers in the world. Big, hairy, audacious goal, of being somebody that others could look to as a source of encouragement, as a source of information. And so I think I didn't expect it to be as fun as it is, to be honest with you. But it's going to be a job. But man, I get up in the morning and I absolutely love the work that I do. It motivates me to be able to be a part of people's lives and to reach out and to touch a heart, before you ask for a hand. Or I think it goes back to one of my favorite authors, John Maxwell. He says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so just being able to reach out and touch those hearts and provide them with the information in their most difficult times, I think that's, for me, something I didn't expect.
I agree. I think that is it's part of that thing that gives you that passion for this field. And I think most public information officers that have been in this field for even short period of time, they realize that this is not just a job.
Mm-mm,
It is kind of a calling. You have to want to do this job.
for sure.
Of course, there are those people that get thrown at it and they don't have a choice. But the vast majority of us are in it and we doing it because we love connecting with our community
Yeah, for sure.
and giving them that information that they need.
Yep.
Did you have a memorable experience as a PIO in your mind?
I'll tell you, the first 2 years of working in public information literally kicked my butt. Every possible opportunity, every natural disaster that you could experience in the state of South Carolina, we encountered. Probably the most difficult thing was in 2016, the Townville Elementary School shooting. Something I pray nobody has to ever go through, but unfortunately we did. I was not prepared at all for the type of media coverage because where Anderson, South Carolina is located is basically halfway between Atlanta and Charlotte. So we had news media there within like an hour or two after this event had kind of broken out. I just wasn't prepared. I had only been in that role for like 9, 10 months. I'd only taken the very basic, not even the basic PIO class. I think I took some stuff online, maybe the independent study class through EMI. And so there was so much for me to learn. And it was a true baptism by fire. Working with all of our media partners and the local stakeholders, it taught me a lot about working with people and building relationships.
You're talking about that baptism by fire. I go back to my days when I was first assigned in the public information, and we had an employee that had been robbed. We had a civilian employee that was delivering the bank receipts for the previous day, and he got robbed. And I was still going through court. I come walking out of court, they're calling me on my phone. Hey, we need you to go here. And I get to the scene, and it's a bloody scene. And there was a question about the employee that it may have been staged. And of course I have like 7 camera crews there from the different news stations, all waiting to get that interview. And that was my very first interview that I did on camera with almost no prep. All I put out was the bare bones information. And I remember walking away from there going, I hope I didn't come across as red and sweaty as I felt, because
I'll tell you, that's every time. Doesn't I don't care how close my relationship is with our local media partner or whomever it might be. I sweat. I just want to do the best job I can to represent this agency with the highest level of excellence and integrity. That's it. Period. Help me not to be terrible. You know?
yep, don't let me say anything embarrassing. That's I go back to an incident that happened years ago. It was probably one of the last on-camera interviews that I had done before I retired. That I say years ago, it's almost been 5 years. But the we had an accident where a county sheriff's department struck and killed two women going through an intersection. And I remember doing the on-street interview with the media, and I made a comment about how the one vehicle made a left turn and the sheriff's deputy's vehicle T-boned their car. And so what did I have in my mailbox all the next day? Little dog bones.
Yep.
Little dog bones
I'm sure.
broken off with in the T. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, and
those are always fun.
the thing is you can never predict how something's going to be received. You go in with the best intentions of getting the right information to the right people at the right time, and then all of a sudden somehow it goes sideways and gets squirrely. But the best preparation we have is just to build those relationships, I think.
Absolutely. Stephen, you've had multiple PIO positions in law enforcement, emergency management, and now at the fire department. How do those experiences differ from each?
Well, I think for me, it's given me an overall understanding of public safety in general. When I worked with the law enforcement side, 7+ years, the reception from the public at the time was very difficult. And I have my son-in-law is a police officer, so I have a son-in-law who's a police officer. I have a son who's a firefighter. So kind of public safety's in our blood. I think the difference between those is just seeing how public perceives your interactions. And I can't emphasize enough that no matter what role you're working in, it's all about your relationships. If the community understands that you're passionate, that you're coming from a heart that cares, I think your message is much better received. If they see you as cold and hard and uncaring, that message isn't going to be able to get out as effectively. And so I think the most important lesson I've learned in all three of those areas is build the relationships. Everything we do is based on relationships, whether it's with the community, with our internal folks, with our media partners. Relationships are what help drive the message and help really develop the receptiveness that our community receives when we put that message out.
It's amazing that relationships. There's always been like this adversarial thing with law enforcement and the news media in particular. But I found that having those strong relationships with media organizations and having those connections with reporters that work those beats regularly is really important, because not only can it help you during a crisis, especially when you want to get kind of the word across in a different way without violating a trust or giving away information. There's ways that you can have a conversation with somebody in the media if you trust them, that they'll be willing to maybe hold information from a story or delay that story from coming out because of a specific reason, or just simply needing to get a story out later on. You fed them good information and then you want to talk about a feel good story, they're going to be more willing to work with you. And I think there are still those organizations, law enforcement organizations, that do not want to talk to the media.
Yep, and you're exactly right. And I think when we teach these classes, we're beginning to encounter a lot of those individuals that perhaps either the sheriff or the police chief has somewhat of an adversarial approach to it. One of the things I absolutely loved about working with Sheriff Chad McBride up in Anderson County is the fact that he was just a people's guy. People loved him. He was very likable. Even the news media, they were very favorable towards him. I've seen other law enforcement personnel and they're just harsh toward the media. Yeah, they can be hard. Media can be hard. but they're doing the job of getting information out. We have to remember that the news media is a business. It's a business model, and they've got to sell clicks. They've got to get that information out. And so, how do we best do that? Well, we're about relationships. As firefighters, our number one priority is life safety. So, how do we communicate those messages? Is building those relationships.
Absolutely. I go back to that you brought that you talked about the it's a business model. They're also the mirror to the world. I interviewed I met a reporter. My daughter, when she was going into journalism, wanted to go to a news station, so I contacted a reporter I knew at an ABC station here in Chicago, and he said, "Yeah, come down on a Sunday. I'm doing the morning broadcast, and we'll talk to your daughter." And we brought him down, and this reporter, who's fairly big now, said, "We are the mirror to the community. It is our job to reflect what's going on in the community. It's not a personal thing. It's not an agenda issue. We just have to get the news out." So, wouldn't it be easier for law enforcement to provide the basics that we need so that we can get that information out versus not saying anything and allowing us to talk to some guy in a corner that may not have any information of any value, but he saw, heard, or thought he saw something that is completely inaccurate and that might get reported?
Well, and that goes back to one of the things that I do here at the fire district. We have every year a leadership academy, and as part of that, I go in and I talk to the officers, the lieutenants, the captains who are getting ready to be promoted into their respective positions. And I tell them that, you have an opportunity to impact the message of our agency. And the way that you become the mouthpiece is by telling the good stuff. Tell the good, the bad, the ugly. Of course, they're like, you're the PIO, you handle it. But hey, there's going to be times where maybe I'm on vacation or I'm just not available, or we have multiple incidents. You're going to have to be the face of this organization and do that with a heart of compassion. Talk to people the way you want to be talked to. Bottom line.
And that's what gets most PIOs in trouble when they don't do that. All right, Stephen, let's switch this up. Let's go to some rapid. Oh, no, hold on. Is there a question I should have asked? And if so, how would you have answered it?
You know what? You had to do that to me. The question that you should have asked me, maybe why somebody should be involved as a public information officer. And I guess
Awesome.
that question is, if you love people, if you love operating in a spirit of excellence and integrity and representing an organization that brings value to your community, be a PIO. There's nothing more enjoyable and exciting than being the spokesperson, being the face of an organization, and being able to communicate the power of what that agency is accomplishing in your community. So there you go. How about that?
That's God, I could not sum that up any better. That's awesome. All right, rapid fire questions. Ready?
Fire away.
Texting or talking?
Talking.
Book or movie? Coffee, tea, or energy drink?
Coffee and tea.
Adult drink of choice?
I'm not an adult drinker. I mean, maybe wine.
What would be your superpower if you could have one?
Superpower, ability to see into the future.
Interesting. Ask permission or beg for forgiveness?
Ooh, I'm a permission guy.
What place do you want to most travel to?
I would love to go to Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. It's where my family roots are located, so I'd love to get back there and check that out.
Nice. What's your favorite way to relax after a long day?
Music. Gotta have some good music, whether it's Lecrae, some KB, Elevation, Mad City. I've got to have some music.
Nice. If you could choose to have coffee with any historical figure, alive or dead, who would it be?
Probably for me, somebody like Sir Winston Churchill. He was a pivotal figure during World War II, and the man he was like the people's representative. He had a bigger than life personality. And I think just the genius of how he navigated and brought the United Kingdom through the turmoils of World War II. To me, that's something I would love to learn about. How do you deal with adversity like that?
I don't think anybody's ever said that name. That's a good one. I like that, Stephen. Thank you. All right, final thoughts. What key points would you like listeners to take from today's interview?
Relationships, relationships, relationships.
Awesome.
Everything we do in public safety is about relationships. And if you don't have the relationships, your message isn't going to be received. We just did a smoke alarm blitz this past weekend. We had the police department involved. We had Habitat for Humanity, Red Cross, State Fire, the town administration, public works, community outreach. All of those were relationships. Oh, and I can't forget our awesome Fire Explorers post. 33 people came together to work in a community setting, and that was all based on relationships. We were able to affect the lives of 62 homes, and we installed 134, 135 smoke alarms and got people safe. So you don't do that by yourself. You do that through relationships, and that's what this is all about. Build those relationships, not only internal relationships, but the relationships with your media partners, your external stakeholders, relationships. I can't stress that enough.
I love that. And you know what? Smoke detectors, every time I hear about people dying in a home and I hear about an inactive or inoperable smoke detector, they are so simple nowadays. And it drives me crazy every time I hear that. Thank you for doing that. How could people best reach out to you if they want to? I jumped ahead here. As we wrap up, is there a piece of wisdom or motto that you'd like to live by?
Well, for me, my life motto is a scripture. It's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He'll direct your path." And um, I've had some major challenges in my life, and because of the faith that I have and the power that I trust in, I've got through some crazy times, from my wife going through breast cancer 7 years ago to being homeless. I couldn't have done it by myself, and just trusting in God during those difficult times has really carried me through.
Outstanding. How could people best reach out if they want to follow up or learn anything more or talk to you about something that you're doing down in Bluffton?
After this interview, Robert, they probably don't want to talk to me. I'm just kidding. In the event that they do, LinkedIn is a great way. I love reaching out through LinkedIn, but you can also reach out to me through my email here, PIO at blufftonfd.com. That's PIO at BLUFFTONFD.com. And love to reach out. Man, if you just want to bounce an idea or just build a network, that's the most important thing in this profession, is the network that you build.
And I will add all that into the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you very much for being on the show, and I hope we get to teach sometime together. That would be outstanding.
I do too. Thanks, Robert. I greatly appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you.